They moved to a quiet town for safety, for a fresh start, but peace turned into something far darker. The stairs, the silence, the notes, they all built to one chilling night when help was too far away. Now, every sound outside feels like a warning, every shadow like a threat. In a place where everyone knows your name, what happens when they decide you don't belong? I was 34 the year we moved to Norwalk, a small town tucked somewhere between endless cornfields and silence. My wife said it would be good for us, cheaper rent, safer schools, fewer sirens. I wanted to believe her. After years in the city, I thought maybe she was right. A little peace couldn't hurt. So, we packed up our life and drove west, pulling into a neighborhood where every house had the same vinyl siding, the same bright flags waving on porches. Except, of course, for the faces. The first thing I noticed was how quickly people looked away when I waved. Not everyone, but enough to feel it. A man watering his lawn paused mid-spray, watching the moving truck like we were unloading a circus. Two teenage boys rode past on bikes and slowed down, whispering just loud enough to make me notice. My daughter, 9 years old and full of curiosity, pressed her face against the car window and whispered, "Daddy, why is everybody staring?" I told her they were just curious about new neighbors. That was easier than saying what I felt. Our street had a single stop sign that nobody stopped at. The corner store was run by a family who smiled wide, but I could see the question in their eyes, "What are you doing here?" By the second week, we learned we were the only black family in town. People didn't say it outright, but you could feel the weight of being different, heavier than humidity in July. The mailman never looked me in the eye. At the diner, conversations dipped when I walked in, like someone turned down the volume. One evening, after work, I decided to take a walk. The air smelled like rain that never came. Every step along those cracked sidewalks echoed louder than it should have. Houses were lit softly from within, the glow of television screens painting curtains in blues and whites. I heard laughter behind closed windows. I kept my hands out of my pockets, shoulders back, like I was back in high school walking through a security check. Then came the first note. It was taped to our front door when I got home. A piece of lined notebook paper, folded once, with a single sentence written in shaky block letters. Not a good fit. My wife tried to laugh it off, said it was probably kids being stupid. I nodded, but the paper felt warm in my hand, like it carried the heat of whoever wrote it. We didn't tell our daughter. We just tucked her in early and sat on the couch, the TV playing some sitcom we didn't watch. The laugh track sounded wrong, like laughter in a dream. Days passed. A few neighbors waved now, but the smiles never touched their eyes. At night, I noticed cars slowing down near the house, headlights sweeping across the blinds. Once, I woke at 2 a.m. to the sound of gravel crunching. By the time I got to the window, the street was empty, except for a single candy wrapper glinting under the lamppost. 2 weeks later, another note appeared. This one wasn't taped. It was slipped under the doormat, so I almost missed it. Same handwriting. Same lined paper. Leave before the frost. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay there listening to the wind push against the siding, wondering how long until the first frost in Norwalk. Wondering if whoever wrote that note knew the exact date. After that second note, I started keeping the porch light on. All night. It didn't help. If anything, it made me feel more exposed, like a target lit up against the dark. My wife stopped going for evening walks. Our daughter asked why Mommy didn't sit on the porch anymore, and we told her it was too hot outside, even though the nights had started to cool. I tried to act normal. Went to work, came home, waved at neighbors. Some waved back. Others didn't. I noticed things, though. Little things. Like how the man across the street, Harold, I think his name was, always seemed to be looking through his curtains when I pulled into the driveway. Or how the woman with the golden retriever would cross the street when she saw me coming, tugging her dog along like I was a pothole. One Saturday morning, I was out mowing the lawn when I saw them. 4 men, standing near a pickup parked a few houses down. Talking, laughing, but their eyes kept flicking toward me. I could feel it, even with the mower roaring. When I shut it off, the air was too quiet. One of them raised his hand, slow and lazy, like a mock wave. I nodded back and went inside, heart pounding harder than the machine had. That night, the third note came. It wasn't folded. It wasn't even subtle. Just a sheet of paper pinned to our front door with a nail. The sound of metal biting would still echoes in my head, even though I didn't hear it happen. This time, there were 3 words. You've been warned. My wife cried in the bathroom with the faucet running. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that note like it might explain something if I stared long enough. But it didn't. It was just ink and paper, and yet it felt heavier than anything I'd ever carried. We talked about leaving. Packed a few boxes, just in case. But then we hesitated. Moving isn't free, and pride isn't cheap either. Why should we run? We weren't doing anything wrong. That's what I told myself. That's what I told her. Then the night came. It was late, after midnight. I woke to the sound of tires on gravel, slow and deliberate. I slipped out of bed and peeked through the blinds. Headlights. 2 sets. Cars parked a little down the street. Engines idling low. I could make out silhouettes inside. No one got out. They just sat there, lights cutting through the dark like twin blades. I woke my wife and told her to take our daughter into the back room. My hands shook so bad I could barely dial 911. When the dispatcher picked up, I started to explain, but then the engines revved, and the cars pulled away. Just like that. When the cops finally came, their flashlights swept over nothing. No nail, no note, no cars. Just me, standing barefoot on the porch, trying to steady my breath. One of the officers, a tall guy with a jaw like a brick, asked if I'd been drinking. I told him no. He wrote something down on his pad and said they'd keep an eye out. Then they left. After that, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the living room with the lights off, listening. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. Every gust of wind felt like a warning. At some point, maybe around 3 a.m., I heard it. Not a car this time. Not laughter. Just a soft knock on the front door. 3 taps. Slow. Patient. I didn't move. Couldn't. When I finally looked through the peephole, the porch was empty. But there was something on the mat. A single black feather. She moved to a quiet town for a fresh start, but someone was always watching. The notes, the photos, the late-night footsteps, each sign pulled her deeper into a nightmare she couldn't escape. In a place where everyone knows everyone, what happens when the wrong person knows too much? Some towns keep secrets. Others turn you into one. I moved to Maple Hollow in the spring, chasing a job offer that felt too good to turn down. It was one of those towns you see in postcards, quiet streets, blooming dogwoods, American flags hanging from porches like proud whispers. My new place was a small apartment above the bakery on Main Street. The air smelled like sugar and yeast most mornings, and for a while, I thought maybe this was what peace felt like. I was 32, single, and used to the hum of city life, the background chorus of car horns, laughter, and arguments muffled by brick walls. Here, silence was louder than any noise I'd ever known. People noticed me right away. Not in a friendly way, not exactly hostile either, just that curious, lingering stare like they were trying to place me in a puzzle where I didn't belong. The first day I walked to the grocery store, a man in a baseball cap held the door for me. He smiled, but it didn't touch his eyes. Behind me, I heard him mutter something under his breath, soft, low, but sharp enough to catch. I turned slightly, and he looked away like it never happened. At work, the team was polite. Surface level nice. They asked where I was from, how long I planned to stay, if I was used to small town life. The word used hung in the air like smoke. My boss introduced me to a few people around town, and soon, I knew most of the names and faces. But that didn't make the stares stop. Then came the first sign something was wrong. It was late one evening. I'd gone for a jog, just trying to shake off the day. The sun had dipped, leaving the sky the color of bruised peaches. As I rounded the corner near the old train tracks, I felt it, a prickling on the back of my neck, that animal sense of being watched. I slowed down, glanced over my shoulder. Empty street. Still, my pace quickened all the way home. When I reached my building, I told myself I was imagining things. Big city nerves in a small town setting. I locked the door, took a shower, and tried to forget. 2 nights later, it happened again. This time, I wasn't running. I was coming back from the diner, takeout in hand. A black pickup idled at the end of Main Street, headlights off. The driver's silhouette sat still, like a cutout against the dark. I crossed the street, heart thudding, pretending not to notice. When I glanced back, the truck was gone. That night, I found something tucked under my doormat, a Polaroid photo. Blurry, grainy, but unmistakable. It was me, walking down Main Street, wearing the same jacket I had on that night. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? The sheriff whose gaze lingered too long when I met him at the cafe? The neighbors who waved with tight smiles that never softened? Instead, I double-checked the locks. Drew the curtains tight. Told myself it was some stupid prank, maybe kids with a camera. Then, 3 days later, another Polaroid. This one slid halfway under my door. Same angle. Same street. Different day. And this time, there were words scrawled on the back in shaky, black ink. You look better when you smile. After that second Polaroid, something shifted inside me. I stopped jogging. Stopped walking anywhere after dark. I even started leaving lights on in every room, like brightness could build a wall between me and whatever was out there. But deep down, I knew light doesn't stop someone who wants to see you. A week crawled by, quiet but wrong. The kind of quiet that presses on your chest. At work, I smiled through meetings, laughed when I was supposed to, but every sound outside my window made me flinch. At night, I barely slept, lying there listening to the low hum of the bakery fridge downstairs, praying it would drown out any other noises. Then, one morning, I opened my door and froze. Another Polaroid. This time, it wasn't me on Main Street. It was me inside my apartment. Standing by the window. Pulling the curtain shut. My throat went dry. I looked around the hallway, empty. No voices, no footsteps, just the faint smell of sugar from below. I didn't go to work that day. Didn't call anyone. I sat on the couch with my phone in my lap, staring at the walls, wondering if there was a camera hidden in the vents or the ceiling light. I checked every corner, every shadow. Nothing. By late afternoon, I convinced myself to breathe. I ordered food, paid the driver in cash at the door, barely opening it. As soon as I turned back toward the living room, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. One message. Pretty in red. I was wearing a red sweater. My hands shook so hard I almost dropped the phone. I locked the door, shoved a chair under the knob like that would stop anyone determined enough. And then, for the first time, I called the police. The deputy showed up 30 minutes later, slow and calm, like this was just another noise complaint. He was a tall man, sunburned skin, mirrored sunglasses even though the sky was overcast. I tried to explain, but when I handed him the photos, his mouth curled, not into a smile, not exactly, but something close enough to make my stomach knot. Could be a prank, he said, flipping through the Polaroids like they were postcards. Folks around here get bored sometimes. A prank? I could barely get the words out. Someone's watching me inside my home. He shrugged. Said he'd file a report. No promises, no urgency. Just a nod and the soft click of his pen. When he left, I locked the door again. Double-checked the windows. Sat there in the dark, listening. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Around 2 a.m., I heard it, the sound of boots on the stairs outside my door. Slow, deliberate steps, one after another, until they stopped right outside. I held my breath. A shadow moved under the crack of the door. Then, the faint sound of paper sliding against wood. I waited until the footsteps faded, until silence pressed so hard against the walls it hurt. Then I reached for the paper. My hands were cold, numb, as I unfolded it. No Polaroid this time. Just a handwritten note in that same shaky ink. You shouldn't ignore me. In a small town where everyone knows your name, danger doesn't always come from strangers. The notes, the whistles, the silent warnings, they started as whispers but ended as something much louder. How far would you go to feel safe when the place you've always called home turns against you? Some roots don't grow deep, they rot quietly, waiting. I grew up in Oak Ridge, a town so small you could drive through it in 10 minutes if you didn't catch a red light. We weren't the only black family, there were a few of us scattered across town, but that didn't make it easier. Everyone knew everyone, and everyone had a place. Ours was on the outside, even if nobody said it outright. Most days, it was the kind of racism that hides behind smiles. People waving but not stopping. Invitations that never quite made it to your door. Teachers saying you were so articulate, like it was a surprise. You learn to live with it. You learn to swallow it. But some things don't sit down easy. I was 19 when it started, just out of high school, working part-time at the hardware store while figuring out what to do with my life. It was summer, hot enough that the asphalt shimmered like water. That day, I was on delivery duty, driving a beat-up company truck out to a farm on the edge of town. When I pulled up, the place looked empty. No dogs barking, no voices, just a house that leaned a little too far to one side and a barn with rust eating through its doors. I hopped out, wiped the sweat from my forehead, and started unloading the lumber. That's when I heard it. A whistle. Low, drawn out, sharp enough to slice through the heat. I turned, expecting to see someone standing by the porch, but the steps were empty. The whistle came again, this time from the tree line. A figure stood there, half hidden in shadow. A man, tall, wearing a cap pulled low. He didn't move, didn't wave, just watched. I called out, "Got your delivery." My voice sounded too loud, too eager. The man didn't answer. He just tilted his head a little, like he was studying me. Then he disappeared into the trees without a sound. I told myself he was the owner, maybe shy, maybe didn't want to talk. But as I strapped the last piece of lumber down, I saw it, something scratched into the side of the truck. 4 words, carved deep into the paint with something sharp. Don't come back. I drove off faster than I should have, gravel spitting behind the tires. When I got back to the store, I told my boss the farm was empty. Didn't mention the man. Didn't mention the warning. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that whistle. The way it cut through the air, the way the man stood so still. Oak Ridge had its share of weird folks, sure, but this felt different. It felt personal. A few days later, I had another delivery. Same direction, different address. My stomach sank when I saw it was only 2 miles from that farm. I almost asked someone else to take it, but pride is a heavy thing. So I went. The road was quieter than I remembered. Too quiet. As I passed the turnoff for the farm, I slowed just a little. The driveway was empty. No truck, no man, just the barn doors hanging open like a mouth frozen mid-scream. I didn't see the first note until I got back home. It was under my wiper blade, flapping in the breeze. Plain white paper, black ink, printed neat. "You don't belong there." I stared at that note for a long time, long enough for the sun to burn low and orange behind the rooftops. The letters were sharp, deliberate, like someone took their time making sure it looked clean. My first thought was to throw it away, but something about the way it was folded stopped me. Someone had handled this carefully. Someone wanted me to know they were close enough to touch my truck. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the house made my muscles tense. Around midnight, I heard tires on gravel outside. Not fast, slow, rolling, like whoever it was didn't want to wake the street. I peeked through the blinds. A pair of headlights glowed at the end of the block. The engine idled for a minute before the lights cut out, swallowing the car into darkness. I told my mom the next morning. She brushed it off. Said small towns have small minds, and I should just keep my head down. But I couldn't shake the feeling. It wasn't just words anymore. It was presence. It was someone making sure I knew they were watching. A week later, the store sent me out on another run. Different part of town this time, but when I walked to the truck, my stomach turned. Another note, tucked under the wiper blade. "Last warning." My hands shook as I climbed into the cab. I drove with both windows down, hoping the wind would calm the pounding in my chest. It didn't. The delivery was uneventful, but when I got back to the store, I noticed something I'd missed before: faint scratches along the side panel, like fingernails dragged across metal. And in the dust on the tailgate, a single word traced with the pad of a finger. "Leave." I didn't say a word to anyone. Just clocked out, drove home, and parked in the garage like the steel door could keep the world out. That night, I sat in the living room with every light on, waiting for something to happen. It didn't take long. Just after midnight, the whistle came back. Soft at first, drifting through the open kitchen window like a thread of sound. 3 notes, low and slow. Then silence. I froze, every muscle locking tight. It came again. Louder this time. Closer. I crept to the window and peeled back the curtain just enough to see. The street looked empty, washed pale under the porch lights. But then I saw movement, a shadow breaking against the glow, stepping back into darkness. My breath caught. Whoever it was, they knew I was looking. The whistle came one last time, right outside the window. So close it rattled through my bones. Then footsteps, slow and steady, fading into the night. When I opened the door, there was nothing. Just the quiet hum of cicadas and the faint smell of dust on the wind. Nothing, except for what was waiting on the hood of my car. Another note. No neat letters this time. Just a single word, scrawled big and jagged, like whoever wrote it didn't care if the ink bled. Run. He came to a small town for honest work, but someone decided he didn't belong. The stairs turned into notes, and the notes turned into something far worse. When help feels useless and the dark feels alive, how do you outrun someone who never stops watching? In Wexler, leaving might not be an option anymore. I never planned on staying in Wexler. It was supposed to be temporary, a construction job that would keep me busy through the summer. The kind of work where you clock in early, sweat under the sun, and clock out with your body aching but your wallet a little heavier. The town was small, quiet, wrapped in fields and rusted fences, the kind of place where Friday nights belonged to football games and Sundays smelled like church suppers. There were other black folks in Wexler, but not many. We saw each other around town, at the gas station, at the hardware store, but we didn't always speak. Not out of coldness, just a mutual understanding. Keep your head down, do what you came here to do, and leave before anyone decides you've stayed too long. The crew I worked with was mixed, some good guys, some the kind who look at you a little too long when you walk into the break room. It wasn't anything I couldn't handle. You learn to laugh at the right times, keep your voice even, and never let the weight of their words show on your face. But then there was Dale. He wasn't on our crew. Didn't work at the site. Just a guy who seemed to be everywhere I went, on Main Street when I grabbed lunch, at the gas station when I filled up, sitting on the hood of his truck across from my motel like he had nothing better to do. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Small towns make strangers stand out. Maybe I stood out to him the same way. Then came the first time I caught him following me. It was after work, close to dusk. I'd stopped by the grocery store for a few things, bread, milk, something to heat up in the motel microwave. When I walked out, Dale's truck was there, parked 2 rows over. I didn't think much of it until I noticed him in the driver's seat, staring dead ahead, like he wasn't looking at me but through me. I drove slow, hoping he'd turn off, but when I checked the mirror, those headlights stayed steady. I took the long way back, winding through side streets. He stayed right there, never getting too close, never falling too far behind. By the time I pulled into the motel lot, my hands were slick on the wheel. He didn't stop. Just rolled past slow enough for me to see the outline of his face lit by the dashboard glow. That night, I didn't sleep much. Every engine outside made my pulse kick. I told myself maybe it was a coincidence, maybe he lived near the motel. But the next day, he was waiting again, sitting on the tailgate of his truck across from the job site, chewing something slow, eyes fixed in my direction. The guys on the crew didn't say anything. Didn't even look. Like maybe they knew something I didn't. 2 days later, the first note appeared. It was on my windshield when I left the site. A piece of yellow legal paper, folded once, the writing deep enough to dent the page. Don't get comfortable. I crumpled it and told myself it was just some drunk fool trying to scare me. But deep down, I knew it wasn't random. It was him. Dale. And somehow, I knew it wasn't the last warning I'd get. I kept the note in the glove box. Not because I wanted to, but because throwing it away felt like pretending it didn't happen. After that, I started parking under the brightest light in the motel lot, locking the door twice, pulling the curtains tight. It didn't help. The air still felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to break. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Dale's truck wasn't outside the site, and for a moment, I let myself think maybe it was over. Maybe he got bored. Maybe he found somebody else to watch. Then Friday came. I worked late, hauling the last of the tools back to the shed. The sky had already turned the color of old bruises, that deep purple that comes before night. When I walked to my truck, the lot was empty. Everyone else had gone home hours ago. And there it was. Another note. Folded neat. Tucked under the wiper like a gift. My stomach dropped before I even opened it. You're being watched. My hands shook so bad I almost tore it in half. I glanced around, scanning the tree line, the road, every shadow stretching too long in the dying light. Nothing moved. But I felt it, that prickle on the back of my neck, the certainty that someone was close enough to see me. I drove straight to the motel, locked the door, and sat in the dark with my phone in my hand, debating whether to call the sheriff. But what would I say? A man is looking at me too long? He drives near me sometimes? 2 notes that don't mention his name? I could already hear the tone in their voices, calm, patient, dismissive. So I stayed quiet. Until the 3rd note came. It was Saturday night. I'd left the curtains open just a sliver to let the heat out. That's when I heard it, a soft tap against the glass. Not loud. Not a knock. Just enough to pull me from the edge of sleep. I sat up, heart pounding, and there it was. A piece of yellow paper stuck to the outside of the window with a strip of tape. My breath caught as I leaned closer to read it. "I know where you sleep." I froze. My skin felt too tight, my hands too cold. The parking lot was empty when I stepped outside, at least, it looked empty. But the sound of an engine carried from somewhere down the road, low and steady, like someone easing off the gas. I couldn't see headlights, just the faint glow fading into the trees. I didn't go back inside right away. I stood there, staring at that empty stretch of blacktop, every hair on my body standing like wire. When I finally walked back in and locked the door, my reflection in the window didn't look like me anymore. I haven't told anyone. Haven't called the cops. I just keep the notes in the glove box, like proof that this isn't all in my head. But sometimes, late at night, when the highway goes quiet and the cicadas start screaming, I swear I can hear the slow crunch of tires rolling over gravel. Closer. And closer. Thanks so much for watching. Your support truly means the world to me. Every like, every comment helps this channel grow and keeps me going. If you enjoyed the video, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a new upload. My dream right now is to reach 100 subscribers, and with your help, I know it's possible. See you in the next one.